Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome into the room. This is the AACBF Literacy Live Show. We are doing 31 days of culturally affirming reading, and tonight is night number 20, and we are so happy to be here. So, thank you for joining us tonight, whether you're live with us or if you're watching replay. Post a comment, give us some love, let us know. Do you enjoy the book that we're sharing? So, we're getting ready to share a really great book tonight. If you saw the Facebook cover, then you know we're going to read Bad News Outlaws, and it's a story of Bass Reeves, an actual story, real life. So it's a historical fiction, and it's based off of his real life, the remarkable life of Bass Reeves. He was a U.S. Deputy Marshal, and amazing, amazing, amazing story. So you don't want to miss it. As well, we are having our second annual African American Children's Book Festival. That's what the AACBF stands for. And we're so very excited. We hope you have already registered. We have quite a few people that have been registering. We want you to register if you have not. It is absolutely free. I know you like free 99. I know I like free 99. And so it is absolutely free. And we have some gifts that we're going to be giving away. How about that? Who wouldn't want that? And so we want you to make sure that you are, again, a part of that blessing that we're going to give out. You don't want to miss it. So let me show you what you have the opportunity of walking away with.
Put your fist up.
Put your fist up.
Put your fist in the air.
Put your fist up.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Put your fist up. Fist up.
Freedom.
What we want, what we need, what we deserve. Freedom. Black power, scream it loud.
All right, y'all see me back here bopping and dancing. You couldn't see me; I was in the back room. But now you can see. Oh my God, the song is amazing. I love it. Again, it's if you've been watching us throughout the past 20 days, and you know that was written by one of my cousins, and two other cousins are on it. They're the ones that's helping do the rap. Phenomenal, phenomenal song. So thank you, Courtney Steele Productions. Again, we're so very excited to be with you tonight. If you are listening in for the first time, let me give you a real quick overview of what the AACBF is all about. Well, it started the African American Children's Book Festival last year as a way to honor my uncle, Defense Captain Mark Clark from Black Panther Party. He was killed in 1969, and last year, 2019, was the 50th year of his death, honoring his death. And, we do a memorial every year for December 4th, the day that he was assassinated, doing his job, trying to help build the community. And from there, we've just, again, really been able to continue his legacy on. And one of the things, if you know about the Black Panthers, was reading. Reading was very, very important. They had mandates to read and understand and know about their culture, our culture. And so I've been an educator, and I won't go into that story tonight, but because of my uncle, my mom told me a story that literally changed my whole life, changed the trajectory of my life, and changed my impact that I have been able to give on life. And so we'll talk about that another time, but I just want everyone to know how valuable reading is. And because of that change that happened in my life as an educator, my goal has always been for children to read, read, read. And more than that, especially African American children, to know their culture, their history, and their legacy. And in addition, other ethnicities to know and understand the great impact of what all we've done. So tonight, I'm going to read. And so that's what we've been doing for 31 days. We're reading and introducing our audience to some wonderful, culturally rich books. And tonight we're going to talk about Bass Reeves. But I started the African American Children's Book Festival, and this year we're having it on September the 19th. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be from 12 to 3 p.m. Again, you don't want to miss it. The information is down at the bottom. You can go to that website and register. It's absolutely free. But as you saw in the promo just a minute ago, we are going to be giving away over $500 worth of free books. Now, tell me, in the time right now where many of you are doing virtual teaching or babysitting, but even when the teachers are doing it online, parents, you still have a lot more responsibility than you had before. And so, who couldn't stand to have extra books built into their child's library? So, again, make sure you register. Share this, share it with somebody else, tell somebody else about it. It's so very key. And so, we want you to do that. So, that's the whole goal of what we're doing in a nutshell, because literacy in the African American community is still not where it needs to be. It's still not. We have children that are literate, but they're functional literate, meaning they can read, but they only can read at a certain level, enough to be functional. And we don't want functional. We want empowerment. We want children that are able to be productive producers, not just consumers. And how do you get that? Through education. We make the difference and we can change. And literature is a great way to help start that off. So I'm going to read to you tonight, again, Bad News for Outlaws. And it's the story of Bass Reeves. He was a U.S. Deputy Marshal. And wait till you hear when. If you're watching, shout out and let me know. Have you ever heard of him before? So let me start with this picture. Beautiful picture. So the author is Vanunda Nelson, and the illustrator is R. George Christie. Showdown. Indian Territory, 1884. So, yes, the year was 1884. Jim Webb's luck was running muddy when Bass Reeves rode into town. Webb had stayed one jump ahead of the lawman for 2 years. He wasn't about to be caught now, packing both rifle and revolver. The desperado leaped out a window of Bywater store. He made a break for his horse, but Reeves cut him off. Bass hollered from the saddle of his stallion, warning Webb to give up. The outlaw bolted. Bass shook his head. He hated bloodshed, but Webb might need killing. As a deputy U.S. Marshal, it was Bass's job to bring Webb in, alive or dead. Bass had put Webb behind bars before, but the outlaw was back on the run. This would end today. Webb couldn't outrun a horse and knew he'd hang for sure this time. In a last-ditch effort to escape, Webb stopped in his tracks, turned, and let loose with his rifle. Webb's first shot grazed Bass's saddle horn. His second shot cut a button from the lawman's coat. Webb's third tore the reins right out of Bass's hands. Bass ducked his head, dove off his horse, and rolled to his feet as a fourth bullet clipped his hat brim. That was Jim Webb's last shot ever. Marshal Reeves fired 2 rounds from his West Winchester rifle, and the outlaw was done for. As he lay dying, Webb told Bass, "You are a brave, brave man. I've killed 11 men, and I expected to make you the 12th." Webb gave Bass his revolver out of respect. Bass buried Webb's body and turned in the outlaw boots and gun belt as proof he'd gotten his man. Being a peace officer in Indian Territory was rough and dangerous. It swarmed with horse thieves, train robbers, cattle rustlers, and gunslingers. Bandits, swindlers, and murderers thrived. Travelers sometimes disappeared, never to be heard from again. A lawman's career could be short and end bloody. So Bass Reeves had a big job. It suited him right down to the ground. Everything was about him was big. Bass stood a head taller than most men at this time. He had broad shoulders and huge hands. Bass was so strong, and he single handedly pulled a steer out of the mud up to his neck while a bunch of slack jawed cowpokes stood speechless. Bass sported a large, bushy mustache and wore a wide brimmed black hat. He rode tall, powerful horses. But the biggest thing about Bass Reeves was his character. He had a dedication to duty few men could match. He didn't have to have a speck of fear in him, and he was as honest as the day was long. Slave days, 1840s to 1860s. Bass spent most of his early years as a slave in Texas. Even as a youngster, his star shone bright. Bass was sharp witted and good natured. People liked his pluck. He had a special way with animals, especially horses. Bass tended livestock and fetched water for the field hands. While he worked, Bass sang his song about pistols and rifles and knives. He sang of bandits and killers and thieves. His mother feared her boy might go bad. She couldn't have been more wrong. Bass took to guns like a bear to honey, but he always handled them with respect. He grew up smart and decent and had nothing but right in his heart. His owner, Colonel George Reeves, took Bass hunting and entered him in a shooting contest. He liked showing Bass off. Bass impressed his owner so much that Colonel took him along when he went to fight in the Civil War. But one night, something happened that changed everything for Bass. Folks say the two men argued during a card game, and Bass struck his owner. For a slave, this meant certain death. Bass made tracks for Indian Territory. Freedom and family. Late 1860s to 1864. Only Native Americans were supposed to live in Indian Territory, but some Indians accepted blacks. Bass lived within their tribes, learned their languages, and perfected his marksmanship. As he roamed the frontier, Bass felt a freedom he'd never known. Still, as a runaway slave, Bass had to keep on the dodge. Finally, the Civil War ended, and the slaves were free. It was safe for Bass to settle down. He bought a spread in Arkansas, just outside Indian Territory, and married a pretty woman named Jenny. True to the song of his life, Bass had a big family. He and Jenny and their 11 children worked the land and raised hardy livestock. Bass's life was good, but times were hard for folks in Indian Territory. The vastness of this wild country offered countless places for bad men to hide. The territory became a haven for the West's most notorious outlaws. Settlers in Indian Territory had enough, even though most were squatters who had put down stakes illegally. They were still they still wanted protection. Deputy U.S. Marshal, 1875 to 1800s. In 1875, the U.S. government sent Judge Isaac C. Parker to bring law to the territory. People called him the hanging judge, and the mention of his name made outlaws who never spent a day in church whisper a prayer. The judge hired 200 deputy marshals to track down outlaws in an area covering 74,000 miles, square miles, larger than what would become the entire state of Oklahoma. Bass Reeves was one of them. He became Judge Parker's most trusted man. Bass was perfect for the job. He knew the territory and its people, downright handy tools for tracking criminals. and his skill with shooting irons was already the talk of the territory. Bass was blazing fast on the draw and as good with his right left hand as his right. He would say he was only fair with the rifle, but Bass was such a crack shot, he was barred from turkey shoots at picnics and fairs. He always won. One sharpshooter said when Bass stood firm and took careful aim, he could shoot the left hand hind leg off of a contented fly sitting on a mule's ear at 100 yards and never ruffle a hair. Like most former slaves, Bass couldn't read, but this didn't stop him from doing his job. Before going off, before going after wanted men, he had the arrest warrants from Judge Parker read to him. Bass listened carefully and memorized the shapes of the letters for each name he heard. He memorized the changes against each person, the charges against each person too. And then he hit the trail. Even when he got 30 warrants at one time, Bass always brought in the right outlaws. Bass could be out manhunting for weeks. He slept on the ground under the stars and worked in the bitter cold and the sweltering heat. Like other deputy marshals, Bass traveled with a chuck wagon and a cook, at least a guard, at least one posse man, and tumbleweed wagon to transport captives. Many outlaws at the time weren't much better than hard cases than the hard cases they arrested. But Bass was a right as a rain from the boot heels up. He couldn't be bribed. He shot only as a last resort when Judge Perry said, bring them in, alive or dead. Some outlaws like Jim Webb forced gunplay. Whenever Bass could, he found another way. Bass took many a bad man by surprise through the use of disguises. One day, he posed as a cowboy, another a tramp, a gunslinger, or an outlaw. Even horses played a part in his disguises. Like many U.S. Marshals, Bass rode some of the finest. Most times, he forked a handsome sorrel. Bass rode proud in the saddle. There was no mistaking his silhouette, but prize horseflesh could be a dead giveaway that the rider was an outlaw, was a lawman. Bass always kept some rough stock and rode lazy while undercover. He planned every capture carefully. When Bass caught wind that two outlaw brothers were holed up with their mother's cabin, he rounded up a posse, made a camp some distance away. Bass knocked the heels from a pair of worn boots and shot three holes in a floppy old hat. He hid his badge, handcuffs, and pistols under his trail worn clothes, then started walking alone to the hideout. It was a long walk, 28 miles. Bass wanted to be sure that if the brothers spotted him, they wouldn't suspect he was the law. When the outlaw's mother answered the door, Bass said he was tuckered out and hungry. Showing the woman the bullet holes in his hat, he claimed a posse was after him. She took Bass in, fed him some victuals, and even let slip that her boys were on the lam. When the two arrived, they agreed to partner up with Bass. And after sharing some laughs, everyone went to sleep. Everyone except Bass. At sunup, the brothers awoke in handcuffs. They were dumbstruck. But their mom was fit to be tied. As Bass led her sons away, she followed for 3 miles, calling him every bad name she knew. Wow, he was something else. And so it continues telling about all of the people that he arrested and everything. But I want to share a couple pages with you. He had several criminals, even people tried to get him. He got some of the most notorious people, as I said before, and he was just able to do some of those things. Well, here's something that happened in the book that I want to share that was different and unique. Bass was respected and he was hated. Some whites didn't like the notions of a black man with a badge. Desperados simply wanted Bass off their trails. Bass had to be on the lookout day and night for bad men who were out to dry gulch him. But danger was a small matter for this lawman. Duty was his guide. Right and wrong were clear and simple. One day on the prairie, Bass came across an angry mob lynching a man. Without a word, Bass cut the man down and put him on the back of his sorrel. This was near as risky as a grasshopper landing on an anthill. But the mob just watched in awe as he rode off. They recognized Marshal Reeves and dared not interfere. Oh, he had no fear. He was amazing. So I ask the question again, how many of you know about Bass Reeves? And so again, it keeps on telling the story, even how his son had committed a crime, and they were scared to arrest his son because of what type of man he was. And when he came back and he found out, he took his son, and his son ended up going to jail, but he ended up getting some probation and only doing 10 years instead of life. So he really was about, doing the right thing. And then the book tells about Oklahoma when it becomes a state, November 16, 1907. It became a state. And when it became a state, he was no longer a marshal because they didn't have marshals that did the Indian Territory was ended. And so then it tells that he passed away. And when all of the people came to his funeral, what all they had to say about him. And it was really great. I am going to read this page, one of the pages in the back. It says, over the years, the name of Bass Reeves faded, like one of those heroes they call unsung. But his story has folks talking again, talking about the big man who helped bring peace to a big country. Deputy U.S. Marshal Bass Reeves, a true champion of the American West. And then there's a picture of him. And so again, I didn't learn about Bass Reeves when I was in school. I love westerns. I watched cowboy movies, but there was no movies that showed us about Bass Reeves. And this was something great that he did. And so that's why it's so very important for Ubuntu Press as well as Kingdom Influence. Our goal is making sure that children know about culturally affirming books. And so we hope you enjoyed this. The author said she wrote it because she didn't find out about Bass Reeves until 2003. This book came out in 2009. And so this book is not even brand new. So again, I asked the question, how many of you know about this book? So it's very important that we let our children in on everything. So we thank you so much. This is day number 20 of 31 days of culturally affirming books. We will be back again tomorrow. We will be sharing books. We want you to register. The book festival is September the 19th from 12 to 3 p.m. You can register at that bit.ly, and most people use bit.ly, so you know about bit.ly, but the that part of it is AACBF. Okay, African American Children's Book Festival. So we want you to be there as well. You can join us on either one of our websites, mykingdominfluence.org. It's a nonprofit based out of Flint, Michigan. And our goal is putting libraries in the homes of children that do not have them. Ubuntu Press is a publishing company. We have a couple books that have been published, most of them, again, telling some really good history that we have not learned. And most children don't know about in traditional school settings. And so we want to get that information out there. Culturally affirming books are out there. Do you know them? If you do not, this is an opportunity. And so I'm going to share the commercial with you one more time. Again, we want people to be able to win the books. And so you need to register. If you have not registered, we want you to register. So please make sure you do that. Join us. It's going to be phenomenal. We have youth authors. We have a youth that's going to be doing spoken word. We have children that are going to be emceeing. A little 5 year old and a 6 year old are going to be doing our helping with the emceeing. We have a live DJ. We're going to play some virtual games and we have some beautiful prizes. And so we want you to come and join us and have a good time. This is something that's family centered and phenomenal. So don't miss it. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. We want to see you there. And so we're going to show you again the video as we close out. We thank you so much for your time. Please chime in and say something. If this blessed you, let us know about it. All righty.
Put your fist up.
Put your fist up.
Put your fist in the air.
Put your fist up.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Put your fist up. What we want, what we need, what we deserve. Freedom. Black power, scream it loud.